everybody. My name is Shari Graubert. I am the creator and host of the Thriving Child, Happy Child Summit. I am also the creator and founder of CityKidAdventures.love. I am so excited to introduce to you Randall Klein. He's an amazing man and a wonderful human being and a natural born teacher. And he is the creator of the Early Reading Mastery Program. He says that he earned his degree in early reading instruction from the University of Preschool. Isn't that brilliant? The pre-K, kindergarten, and at-risk first grade children that he worked with, he says, were his professors. They revealed to him what they needed to learn and when they were ready for it. His work represents what his professors taught him about teaching young children to read. His contribution to the field of early reading instruction is a well-defined sequence of skills and practice activities that allow a child to move successfully toward early reading mastery. It's his desire to create a heightened awareness of the need for systemic, explicit, and developmentally appropriate reading instruction for pre-K, kindergarten, and at-risk learners. With sequence and structure and hands-on materials, we can dramatically increase the reading readiness of children before they enter first grade, and thus drastically reduce the instances of reading failure among first graders. He says, "Listen closely to the little ones you teach and care for each day. They are trying to tell you what they need and how they need to learn it." He says, they are teaching you. It's such a pleasure to introduce you, Randall Klein. You're just so amazing. And can I just tell you, just before, I just want to tell parents that we use some of your tools. They're amazing. And I just wanted to share one of the tools that we use to great success. This is called the 3-letter word pocket. It comes in this box, and there's a whole bunch of them. There's I don't know, maybe 20 in there. And already this is wonderfully tactile. The child can reach into the box and pull out one of these little surprises. And it's a little pocket, and inside are 4 little cards actually. You have, I'm just pulling them out randomly. So here you have a picture of an elk. And then you're given 3 letters, just randomly in the pocket, however they come out. And then the child works out from the sound, elk, how to spell the word. And it's so much fun. And so they get to see the picture, they get to touch the cards with the letters on, they get to sound it out, they get to play like it's a puzzle, and all the while they're learning how to read. It's genius. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's particularly fantastic for a child like ours who's a very physical learner. She's not someone who's going to sit and listen and absorb and learn that way. You know, we have a child who loves to touch things and is very physically curious. So it worked really, really well for us. So anyway, with that, I really want to introduce Randall Klein, the amazing Randall Klein.
Thank you so much for your enthusiasm and your gracious introduction, Shari. It was interesting that you brought out that one material, which is my favorite. And I'll talk about that in a little while, because that is a really key fun activity for children. Another way of looking at that is, we always think about reading as decoding words. But the reverse of that is encoding words. Taking a spoken word and putting it into print. Taking a spoken word and moving it into print. And that's why you have those movable little letter tiles. And that lays the foundation of the child's understanding of this alphabetic principle of our language. And what are words, and how do you take them apart? How do you put them together? And it's one of the ways that we prepare children to decode words, and also as a way to help children who are already decoding, but maybe aren't quite, solid. They're not quite sure about what's going on. So thank you for showing that material.
You know, another thing it does, as well as all of that, it gives them ownership, I think, of the word, because they're physically doing something about it. It's like it belongs to them.
I think that's a very key point. I personally believe that children teach themselves how to read under supervision and with guidance, and if we prepare the environment and sort of have a good idea ourselves of what we can provide for them, they really teach themselves how to read. That has come to me again and again and again, because we see that with children who actually aren't given that much, and all of a sudden they're reading, and you go, how did that happen? They put 2 and 2 together, and they add another element, and all of a sudden they start to work it out. Some children need to have more structure, more guidance. But ultimately, it is an ownership issue. It's giving them, empowering them to figure stuff out, not making it too hard, not making it too easy. It's that sweet spot where they go, I can do this, and it was a little bit hard, but I did it. And it's empowering that way. It builds their self-confidence, and they own it. They own the knowledge, they own the process, and then that process starts to become faster and more fluid and more automatic, and allows them to learn other things. So it's not only learning certain things, certain tasks, certain skills, it's learning how to learn. And that's why I think children do teach themselves how to read, because they learn some things about reading at the beginning, and they apply those same lessons when they get to harder words, longer words, connected text, little books. They start to unconsciously apply what they know. It's sort of like a biofeedback system. If you've ever been hooked up to a biofeedback system, the whole idea is that your brain starts to operate unconscious. I guess unconscious is the right word. It's not a conscious act. It's not a conscious volition. The body starts to do things, or the mind starts to create given certain stimulus.
Oh, that's so great. And so something you said when you said about a child teaches themselves to read. And I'm wondering if I've got a 2-part question. So I'm wondering if there's merit in waiting for a child to be ready to read before teaching reading. And 2, is there a good time to begin teaching reading? So is it just individual?
Well, I mean, how early is a child, how young can a child be before they want to have fun? So, I mean, so that question doesn't make sense to me. I work with 3-year-olds, and I don't work so often with toddlers and infants, but there's ways where you're teaching, but you're not expecting a child to somehow perform. So you're just, as for example, with a baby, and you have a spoon and you're feeding the child and you're saying spoon, and you're being really, really good about giving words, lots and lots of words. You're not expecting the child to repeat it or to know it. You're just doing it. And they love being with mom or dad, and they love eating the little applesauce. So, I mean, is that child too young to start learning? No, the child's never too young to start learning. So that's sort of a flippant answer to a good question. But I feel like when children are speaking language, English pretty well, if they're 2.5 and 3, there are a lot of things we can do to start to build a foundation that will allow them to understand English language, the written language, and how to start figuring out letters and words and being really interested in it. And that's the thing. It's like getting them really interested in the process of reading. One of the things they do is they see mom and dad read, or some children don't. But when they do, that's a lesson. Go, oh, mom and dad like to read. I guess that's what we do in life. We like to read. So I think I want to be like mom and dad. I want to grow up. The child's desire to grow up is so powerful. It's so powerful. Dad, can I go mow the lawn? Well, you're only 4. I'm not sure you're ready to. That's pretty dangerous. But he wants to do it because he sees dad or mom doing, or big brother doing it. But I'll talk about those things as I go into this.
Okay, can I just rewind just a little bit, because I was so enthusiastic about interviewing you and your technique that you've developed. How did you come into this?
Well, my background is in early childhood education. I was a Montessori teacher a long time ago. I taught in Montessori classrooms for about 16 years. Reading was always really interesting to me, because I was trying to figure out, well, why is that kid reading and that kid's not? What's the difference? What is this that this child knows and can do and this child doesn't? And I need to play a role in this because they're entrusted into my care. Also, I did see 3- and 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, of course, and of course 6-year-olds really reading. So I was like, wow, that's a very empowering thing. I'm a true believer in early reading. I think it's one of the great gifts we give children. It's the most important thing that they can learn, I think, in a school setting, besides the love of learning. So it was just this inner desire to scratch beneath the surface to figure it out, what it is.
And how long did it take you to work out the system? Because it's a whole system.
Well, I thought I was finished last week, finally. I'm never finished. I've never finished. But what I would like to do, Shari, if I can, when you're ready, is to actually show you some things with a little PowerPoint so I can sort of show you the process of what I'm talking about. And I don't think it's so much of as a system. You know, most of my career has been teaching public school teachers who are working with at-risk and struggling beginning readers. So I was just giving them tips and clues and some interesting activities and some principles of instruction that I'd learned from working with younger children. And it was only recently when I went to South Africa to actually implement a literacy program in a school that I had to start thinking in terms of, okay, this is a program. They want a program, okay, everything I've done for 30 years now, it's actually a program. I'll just sort of put it in place, train the teachers, put it in the classroom. And this was a Montessori school in South Africa for Black children, which is the only school in the entire country of South Africa of Montessori school, early childhood Montessori school, that's actually for Black children. So that was a great opportunity for me. So I want to share with you some things with the PowerPoint if I could.
Yeah, please. That would be really fantastic.
Okay. So I've always called what I do early reading mastery, and it's really aimed at the preschool and kindergarten and young first and second grade child. A lot of times when I go to public schools, I talk about intervention because these teachers who are working with first, second, and third graders who are really struggling, they're looking for intervention activities and games. But I feel like when I'm working with a 3 or 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, then in a sense, I'm also doing intervention, trying to prevent that child from struggling and failing once he gets to first grade or second grade. And so it's just sort of a little twist of the dial that we can intervene early by it's like giving children healthy food, making sure their bodies are strong so that they can grow and become, you know, their full potential. With reading, some of the things we do with 3 and 4-year-olds really set a foundation. This is an intervention so that when they are given reading instruction, whether it's formally in school or with the parent at home or informally, they're ready to receive that instruction. So I think of that as intervention as well. Now, I always worry of a parent who's listening to me or a teacher who's coming to a presentation that has to go. I have a doctor's meeting, I have to go. Just tell me one thing. What's the most important thing I can remember from this? And so I'm going to start there and then talk about it later. The most important reading skill of everything is called phoneme segmentation. And I'm going to talk a lot about that later. And I'm happy to have private conversations with people if they want to talk about this. It's the child's ability to look at that pig. You see the pig there, Shari?
Yeah.
Can the child look at pig and go, pig? Can he look at the bus and say, bus? That is called phoneme segmentation. I'm going to talk about how we teach that. And it's not something that happens overnight, but it's the most important thing. It's the most important thing. So we're going to play later on a little blending game, which helps children learn how to blend sounds. And in the process, their brain is learning how to take sounds apart from words. So now that I've said that I can feel comfortable to move on my website, I have free materials in the handout section. This is one of them. It's called, it's a little booklet I created for when I went to South Africa in January because I needed to have training materials for teachers of an actual program as opposed to just teaching them principles and giving them some materials. And it's called the Klein Method of Early Reading Mastery. That's an ebook that you can download from my website. If you're working with children who are in first, second, or third grade, this is called the Klein Method of High Frequency Word Mastery. I was just on the phone today with a kindergarten mom, and her child needs help because they're thinking maybe they don't want to put him into first grade next year because he doesn't know very many high frequency words, and that's sort of where it's at. So we're going to help him with that. So some of you will ask questions about high frequency words.
That book looks amazing. I want that book.
Okay.
It looks amazing. I mean, it's just great.
Well, you know, there's only the most frequent words in the English language are the most important words in the English language because they're so frequent. So that's why there's such a pressure on first grade teachers and kindergarten teachers to get these children to know those words. I don't really like the way they're taught because it's like a flashcard thing. It's like memory. And we'll see later how I approach that. One other thing about myself is because of my Montessori background, I have the credentials and the experience to be able to be part of I'm the assistant program director part-time of an online Montessori training program for early childhood and elementary certification. And I'm bringing this to your attention because this website, ageofmontessori.org, has fantastic webinars, all sorts of webinars, a lot about Montessori, but also just about education, about young children, about teaching them about art, music, science. So it's a great resource that I wanted to share with you. And I participated in quite a few of those webinars, and we give them once a month. So there are quite a few of them there. Thought I'd tell you about that.
That's great.
These are some pictures of me in South Africa.
Wow.
One of the great experiences of my life, working with children of impoverished backgrounds, very low income, Black minority mostly. I think there's one little white boy in there someplace. He's part of the orphanage there, so that's why he was there. And then down the photo down below, I got to visit a school in the ghetto, really in the ghetto, and it was just so moving to see children who were learning, teachers and adults who were dedicating their lives to giving these children, proper education.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so one of the things about reading is we always go from speech to print. From speech to print. And that's a theme you're going to see as we go through some of the materials and some of the games and activities. Reading instruction must move from speech to print. And there are two skills that I'm going to talk about that are essential for a young 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old child to have. And that is beginning sound isolation and phoneme segmentation. Beginning sound isolation and phoneme segmentation. Of course, I've already given my pitch about the phoneme segmentation. Because reading actually begins with hearing sounds. Reading for all children begins with what's called phonemic awareness, which is the ability of the child to hear and manipulate sounds in spoken language. That's actually where reading begins. And that's the most important thing that we've ever learned about reading, is that it's actually has less to do with the eye and more to do with the auditory processing of our brain. So a phoneme is the smallest unit of sound. So cat, the word cat, the spoken word cat has 3 sounds, at. And if you close your eyes and say boot, the spoken word boot also only has 3 sounds or 3 phonemes. Doesn't matter that it's spelled with 4 letters. We're talking about sounds. Now, this idea of a child being able to appreciate and identify these sounds in spoken language actually lays the foundation of reading success, as we'll see. It leads to a strong letter recognition, strong word identification, and so we're going to see how that plays out as well. Now, beginning sound isolation. I want the little 3-year-old child that I'm working with, I wish I had a grandchild. At some point I'll have a grandchild who's 3, and I'll start playing games with him or her, trying to get that child's brain to be able to do something, and that is to look at the house and say, and if I give the child a little figurine of a zebra, the child can say zzz. If I give the child a banana or have him hold a ball, I want that child to say b. And that's not something that just happens overnight. It's not just something that I can explain to a child. It's something that his brain has to wrap around or start to do. So this is our goal. I want the little 3, 4, 5-year-old who I'm working with, or if I'm running a classroom, I want them to, at some point to be able to, on their own, look at a house and say, hold a ball and say, buh. Now, why do I want that? Because if a child can look at the picture of bear and say, buh, then lo and behold, they will totally understand that symbol that's next to it, which is very abstract. It's just a squiggle. It's just a black squiggle. But that's the key stuff for reading, isn't it? That thing on the left, that little B. So if the child can look at bear, can isolate the beginning sound and say buh, boom, I am ready to let that child learn the alphabet letters. That's very exciting for me. In an early childhood classroom, of course, one of the principles is you're not supposed to push children. You're supposed to let them, learn naturally and let them go at their own pace. But man, when I started playing games with sounds where I was getting children who were as young as 3, certainly as young as 3, but easily 3.5 and 4. Touching the table and saying t, holding the ball and saying b, looking at the window and saying w. That's the day that I could start teaching the alphabet, which I love to do. So let's see how that works. First, let's talk about beginning sound isolation. I play a little bingo game. This is one of my materials, but you can make this. You can find stuff at home. I'm not trying to push materials. This is just a game idea which you can take or leave. It's a little bingo game. So I have 3 or 4 children. Maybe I only have 1 child if I'm a homeschooling mom. I'm saying, okay, let's get our game pieces. Why don't you pick a card and I'll pick a card. Let's see. Where is the books? So the child looks on the card, finds the books, and puts the game piece on there. Now, I would like the child to repeat books, and that'll happen eventually. And at some point, I'm going to sort of insist on it. In a classroom situation, and many times I'll insist that the child do it at some point, not right at the beginning. And if he doesn't say books, I take the game piece off as if he didn't do it. I said, well, where's the books? Oh, it's here. I said, yeah, but I didn't hear books. Because his voice is more important for his brain than my voice. So if I can get him to say it, great. And if I can't, that's fine too. So this is just a modeling technique, isn't it? I'm not asking the child to identify beginning sounds. I'm just asking the child to identify vocabulary. Where's the buttons? I might even say, where's the monkey? I don't have to only do the b things in the beginning.
I love it that it's also a game, because in the teaching artist work that I do, I always say, and I know this to be true, when a child is emotionally connected and emotionally invested in the activity, in this case, the emotion is joy and fun, the learning is going to settle in and stick more than if it's by rote. So I think this is brilliant.
And
brilliant.
My best tool as a teacher is repetition. So when you have a game that a child wants to play again, you get the natural repetition. Now, there's another thing on this particular game is freedom of choice. I can let the child choose which card he wants to do. I think there are 28 cards in this set. Might actually allow the child to choose which game pieces he wants to use. I have a little set of game pieces where there's different colors and they can choose the pink ones or the blue ones or the jewels or the little elephants, whatever it is. Adding choice into the mix always helps things along. So this is how I model beginning sound isolation. One of the things I do. At some point, when a child actually can isolate beginning sounds, then I want him to practice it. Now he can play this game independently, as you can see from this slide. Now he didn't put a game piece in the boxes, where you're supposed to begin. See the picture of the horse? That's where you're supposed to start, because the horse is sort of giving you your marching orders. The horse is saying, okay, I begin with what sound, Thomas? And he says, okay, find the other pictures to start with. So this allows him to practice beginning sound isolation independently. And so that particular skill becomes very strong. This is an example of one sheet from the student self-checking practice sheet that I have on my website that's free to download. And I'll talk about this a little bit later. It gives the teacher, the parent, the teacher, the child sort of an idea of, okay, what do I want to do today? What do I want to choose? And it gives the child, the teacher and the parent the opportunity to say, well, you need to choose something on this sheet. You can choose this one or that one or this one. And that allows the parent to feel like that they are, you know, how can I express it? The child is working. There's no choice of not working, but there is a choice of which work to do. And each parent has to sort of figure out how that works for them. So let's talk about the alphabet, which I love to teach. If I have a child that can look at apple and say ah, because they can isolate the beginning sounds, then I can say to the child, well, here's how I would do it. This is fun. I'd say, let me start with the goat. Okay, now Thomas, this is a goat. What's the beginning sound of goat? And he says, Shari?
G.
So, well, you know what? See this little black squiggly thing there? That says G. Isn't that interesting? Now let's look at hammer. What's the beginning sound of hammer, Shari?
H.
You know what? This says H. Now, I want you to think about the beginning sound of sun.
S.
And when you're ready to tell me what this letter says, you tell me what that says.
S.
Wow, excellent. Now think about mouse. And when you're ready to tell me what this letter says, tell me. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
Yes.
Okay, so Shari,
Yes.
Think about apple and you tell me what this letter says.
Ah.
Think about hammer and tell me what this letter says. You see what happens here?
Yeah.
This is the alphabetic principle. The child is learning phonics. Everyone's big on phonics, and I am too, but I don't think about phonics that much. I think about the alphabetic principle. Does the child understand how print maps with speech? So now, Shari, I'm just going to point to a letter, and when you're ready, you tell me what you think it says.
Okay. G.
Of course, you did it quickly because you're Shari and you're over 20 years old. But you can
Only just, though.
Now, think about this letter. What do you think that says? Okay, so the picture, of course, is not so much the child memorizes stuff.
Yeah.
You get the principle here.
Well, I was trying to then think of a child using this principle. So with the M, I went to mouse, and mouse starts with and then I went to the left square.
Exactly it.
So it's,
and sometimes, you know, especially with a very young child, I'm not thinking that's going to happen just instantly when I introduce this. I know the child's ready because they can isolate beginning sounds. But let's see if they can understand what I'm trying to get to is looking at the letter and figuring out what it says. I'll take a turn, you take a turn, I'll take a turn, and I'll evaluate like, okay, she's getting it. Okay, I can step back and now I can just ask her, what's this, what's this? So I believe in teaching the letters in clusters. I call them clusters, groups of letters. I'm not trying to teach the whole alphabet at once. Because then I don't know what he knows, what she remembers. I don't know what I've done. It's like, I like to organize my work so that the child has a particular path they can go through. So I like these 5 letters first. It doesn't have to be these 5. But here's another activity. Once a child understands the alphabetic principle here, let's play another game, Susie. I have some picture cards. Let's see, I can actually move. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me pick the picture of monkey down here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go first.
Okay.
Let's see. The beginning sound of monkey is, and I pause because I know the little girl is going to tell me. Let's see. The beginning sound of monkey is. Now, see, it's supposed to be my turn, but I'm conveniently sort of pausing and let the child. You see how I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, Susie. Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to find the Now I'm going to pause to see whether Susie can figure it out. And if not, that's fine. It's my turn after all, right? So let's see. I might need to actually outwardly explain how I got to the right answer.
Yeah.
So let's see. Monkey. Oh, there's the
mouse.
There. Oh, thank you, Susie. And that letter next to the mouse is, there. So I'm going to put it underneath the moose.
Oh, that's a moose.
That's a moose.
I was thinking it was a reindeer.
I'm from Montana, so we have moose.
Montana.
Yeah. So now it's Susie's turn. Which picture would you like to choose? You see, back and forth.
Yeah.
Now, maybe on the first day, we don't get very far. Maybe I'm thinking, oh, you know what? Well, this isn't, it's okay. But I can't just go, okay, bye, do it yourself. Depends on the child, depends on how old they are, depends how sophisticated and mature they are in terms of understanding this code that we're sort of getting them to know. But the principle here is that I don't really need to be that involved once the child can do this, because I'm not testing the child. It's like multiple choice. It's like a multiple choice quiz. Wouldn't you rather have a multiple choice quiz, Susie, than a test on everything? So basically, the seal is telling Susie, little Susie, this is what I want you to go find. I want you to go find this. You see? Yeah. Now that means I don't have to be there all day with Susie asking her questions. The seal is going to ask her the question. The horse is going to ask her the question. The goose is going to ask her, where's the good? Now, eventually, they won't need those alphabet cards to prompt them to figure out where the letter is, and they can just do them without the picture. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the next stage.
Yeah. Here's another great game that I love, because the girl is asking little Susie, Susie, where is the good? The seal is asking Susie to find the s, and the hat is asking Susie to find what? So it's like a multiple choice test. It's not hard, in fact, because she's been very familiar with the 5 letters that she's worked with. And you'll notice that in the first picture where the girl is, there's an R and there's a B.
Mm.
So sometimes teachers will raise their hand and go, wait a minute, you didn't teach them the R and the B. I said, well, I don't need to.
Right.
She doesn't have to find those. I'm not asking her to read any letter. I'm asking her to find the G.
Mm.
This is very reinforcing. It's independent. It's free choice. There's lots of cards the child can work with. And the child is teaching themselves, teaching herself the alphabet.
You know what I also love, Randall? Sorry. It's important to remember we're so familiar with the alphabet that we don't think of them as at all unfamiliar. Like I said, like when you said it's a squiggle on a page. So if I was looking at the R, G, and B, and I'd only learned G or G, I would immediately go to the G because the R and the B are squiggles on the page because I haven't learned them yet.
That's right. That's why it's so reinforcing, because the brain goes right to the right answer, which means that the child is seeing and saying and hearing internally or verbally the right answer. Now, repetition is the best medicine. It's the healing. I always say repetition is the healing balm of education. Well, we don't have to just use that balm for a child who's struggling. We can use it for a child who's just starting out. So that repetition, smooth, maybe that balm is like a lubrication now. It lubricates the path toward reading. Let's look at another game. This is a little bit harder because it just has a letter and there's some 4 pictures. They have to sort of figure out, which two pictures connect with that letter. But that's just another way. If you have a child that's 5 or 6 or 7 who's struggling a little bit with reading or a lot, chances are their letter knowledge is not that great. I go to public schools all the time working with 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders who are really struggling, and I guarantee you that in most cases, those children actually don't know their alphabet as well as you think they do. And sometimes I'm doing an alphabet game with the children, with a small group of children, and the teachers are watching me, and I can hear them thinking, why is he bringing out alphabet work? This is a 1st grader, this is a 2nd grader. Well, and then they see me work with, and they realize, oh, that kid is, he sort of gets it, but he's not that strong. So alphabet knowledge is really, really important. And I want it to grow organically from the child's own activity. So cluster 1 is those 5 letters. And then there are a choice of different activities the child can do. And this is something free you can get from my website. It's a little sort of a checkoff sheet. And once the child gets to the alphabet, I empower them to say, okay, which one would you like to practice with today? I'm sort of the guide. I can know which something that's too hard or they're not ready for. And then we check off a box when they've practiced it or done it. And they don't have to stay on this cluster forever. They don't have to check all the boxes, but it gives me the opportunity, if they do need more practice on something, to actually ask them to do more. Those letters at the very bottom, A, G, H, M, S, all I need is for them to be able to recognize those 5 letters. If I say to them, where's the M? Where's the at? And that's pretty easy, actually. Now let's talk. So anyway, let me go back real quickly, because this same sheet, I have 5 of them, 1 for each cluster of the 5 clusters. Yeah. Once a child has worked and done work with their 1st cluster, the 2nd cluster is easy. 3rd cluster is, they already understand the games. The games are all the same. Right. And so they start to really teach themselves the new alphabet, the new letters, because they figured out the code. They figured out how to learn it, and they already know how to play the game. So now let's talk about phoneme segmentation. I need a child to be able to look at cat and say k-at. That is the most important thing I could give a child, bar none. Phoneme segmentation is the most important reading readiness skill, and actually I think it's the most important reading skill. Even though we don't see it happening when a child's reading. It's like an internal understanding of the structure of how speech and print map. Now, how do I teach a child to segment? I do it by modeling, just like I did it when I modeled beginning sound isolation. I'm not going to ask the child to segment a word until he's ready to do it. So here's a little blending bingo game, okay? Get out your bingo chips or your game pieces. Which ones would you like to use today, Susie? Pink ones, the jewels, the fish, whatever. Okay, pick a card. I'll have a card, you have a card. Maybe your friend's joining us today. She gets to pick a card. Okay, who has a picture of fish? Now see, I didn't say fish, I said itch. I broke the word down into 3 sounds. Now, with a little bit of practice, with a couple sessions, they understand what the game is, and she puts a game piece on fish. Who has a picture of a b-us? So they're practicing blending, because I'm not saying pig, I'm saying p-ig. So they have to blend those 3 sounds together, which is what they're going to do when they start to read, by the way. But what their brain's hearing is segmentation. I am modeling segmentation. So that's one of the ways I teach segmentation, even while I'm really getting them to be fantastic blending sounds.
Brilliant.
Another game I play, which is something you can look at my on my website, there's a little video of this called the blending game, where I hide a picture and I say, guess what I have? Pig. What do you think?
Pig. Well,
Okay, then I turn the picture, they can see that it's pig, and I hand it to the child. So this blending game is a little bit different. I have picture cards that represent spoken words. And I'm going to hide a picture. And Shari, I'm going to play with you today, Shari.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 3 sounds, and you have to guess what picture I'm hiding. I have a picture of a pig.
Pig.
And then I turn it to show that she's right, and I hand it to her. So that's the basic it. It's a blending game. I hide a picture. I give 3 sounds. She blends the sounds together. When she gets it right, I turn the card over. Now, with a very young child, they might look at me and go, what? What are you doing? So I might actually hold 2 pictures and get the child choose which one is the pig. And that's easy because I'm almost saying pig, but not quite. Right. But you'll see this in the video if you go to my website. So one of the things I want to mention is that when I'm playing this game, one of the things we know about young children, if it's too easy, they don't want to play with you anymore. So a lot of times when I'm working with a small group and the teachers are watching me, I'll ask a child, do I have your permission to make it harder? And usually they go, yeah, come on, bring it on. Try to trick me, you know. Even sometimes a little girl, a little shy girl, and sometimes it's a little boy, they'll say, no, don't make it harder. I say, okay, well, I won't make it harder. But then, of course, I proceed to make it a little bit harder. Not noticeably, but it's enough so that it's more challenging. So the way I want to challenge you, Shari, is by hiding the pictures that we've done for a while. Oh, okay. And I'm going to separate the sounds further apart. Okay. Okay. Ish. Fish. Now you're thinking like an adult. The child will either it's a word that they recognize or they don't. Their brain, it's a brain function. You see, either it triggers a word that they know like fish or that doesn't. So I'm going to separate the sounds a little bit further apart. Okay. S. Moose. Now, if you got it wrong, it's because I went too far. And then I need to bring it in. So if I'm working with 3 or 4 children, with one child, I'm showing her 2 pictures and giving her a choice. With another child, I'm keeping the sounds really close. With a third child, I might separate them further. And with another child, I might separate them a lot. But let's keep going because I could talk for 7 hours about the blending game. So the pictures in this set represent spoken words with only 3 sounds. It might be cup, which has 3 letters. It might be church, a picture of a church which has 6 letters. So it has nothing to do with how it's spelled. It has only to do with the sounds in the words. Wow. Now, here's the good thing. This is what Shari was talking about at the beginning, word pockets. I have a little girl named Susie who now can segment, and I can show her the picture of pig, and she can say pig. So I've discovered that she can do it. We've practiced it. I know she can do it. There's no mystery. Okay, now I'm going to go first. I'm going to take a turn. I'm going to pick out some little things from this pocket and put them on the table at random. Oh, pig. Let's see the sounds of pig. Susie, help me with the sounds of pig. And then she'll go pig. And as she says the sounds pig, I'll start to put the letters together to build the word. So that's what that little activity that Shari was showing us at the beginning. It's a word pocket. It's called encoding spoken language. It's the most powerful way to prepare a child for decoding. It's fun, it's manipulative, it's simple, but it's based on whether the child can segment. Now, you might think, well, the child doesn't know those letters yet, or maybe they doesn't know them that well. Well, think about it. The pig is telling the child to find the p. So it's a multiple choice. It's not like she has to actually be able to read p. And then the pig is saying, and then go. You see, so it's sort of giving the child marching orders about, okay, this is what I need from you, Susie. I need these three things. I need the p and the I and the g. So I take a turn, she takes a turn, and then I can see whether she's independent enough. Maybe I'll do it again tomorrow. Or maybe, as in most cases, I say to Susie, man, you can do it all by yourself. I can't believe that. See you later, kid. You know, come and get me, or come and, you know, if I'm in a classroom, I may ask the child to come and show me later so I can take a picture.
Mm. It's so brilliant hearing you describe the theory, because of course the child doesn't know the theory. The child is just having fun and learning. So, you know, it's great. They're just trying to find the p, the I, and the g.
This is the alphabetic principle at the word level.
Mm.
It's not really reading, but it certainly sort of looks like reading. It sort of has a whole lot to do with what we're going to ask them to do pretty quickly. I have a whole collection of pictures that parents and teachers have sent me with children doing word pockets, because I love these so much. And sometimes when I'm doing a PowerPoint for a school, I said, excuse me, but I have to just keep putting these pictures in there because it's so meaningful to me. It's so powerful. I mean, look at this. This little girl is 3.5. I mean, that is just amazing to me. Anyway, so the child's ability to segment then teaches the child how to read. So here's a picture of a bus. Shari, I'm going to work with you today. What are the sounds of bus?
B, s.
Okay, I want you to take those sounds of bus and move your finger, and we're going to read those letters next to it. See? B, so I'm not actually asking the child to read bus. I'm asking the child to take the sounds from the picture of bus and map them onto the symbols. Mm. So it looks like reading, it sounds like reading, but it's not. It tastes like reading, smells like reading, but it's not reading per se. It's mapping. So pretty soon the child can go through the cards. I can play games with them. They can turn the card over where there is no picture, and they start to try to figure it out. Because until the child really knows the alphabet sounds on their own pretty fluently, they really can't decode unless there's a picture there.
I love your use of the word decode for the alphabet. You kind of use that for mathematics. You know, we think of mathematics as symbols that represent amounts, and we forget that these are symbols that represent sounds.
That's so interesting you said that, Shari, because one of the basic principles that Mira Montessori brought to the world back in the early 1900s was the concept of young children could learn mathematics, because if you give them concrete things to play with their hands, to count beads and bars and blocks, and then if you put the symbol to it, that makes sense. In other words, you start with the concrete and then you add the abstract. And we're actually doing that same thing here with the way I approach reading, is we talk about sounds first. And that's actually very concrete. Mm. When the child looks at the picture of fan and says, that is vibration. That's actually physically in their body. And then they map it to a symbolic language, which are those letters that are underneath it. So here's an example where a child can start to read without really being expected to read, and I'll take a turn first. The picture is fan. I'm looking for n. So I'm going to look at all three words down there and figure out which one is n. So if you can follow my cursor.
Yeah.
No, I can stop right there because I know it's not the right word. See?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there it is. Now let's do run. This is run. What are the sounds of run? Oh, maybe this is it. No. Now see, I'm not reading rug. I'm saying does that make sense?
Yes.
And to see which one maps. So it's a variation on what we think of reading, but it introduces a child into printed language.
Yeah.
When I do this kind of an activity, I always start with the picture. Remember, I said at the very beginning, we move from sound to symbol, from sound to symbol, from sound to symbol. I'm not going to say, okay, read this word. I mean, he might want to, she might want to, great. That's where we're trying to get to. We want the child to read those 3-letter words. But in the beginning, I'm going to give the child an understanding of how she can figure stuff out on her own. So go ahead.
Do you find by this point, they'll you'll give them these cards and they'll just say bus. They'll see the picture and then go to breaking it down. So bus.
Well, that's what I hope. And that's why I'm always there at the beginning to take a turn, to at least show them that that's how they can get the right answer, or how they can check the right answer. How they do this is up to them. Mm-hmm. I'll say this to little Susie. Okay, well, Susie, great. You took a turn, I took a turn. Okay, come and get me later. I'd love to take a picture so your mom can see it, or your dad can come and see your auntie, whoever's going to pick you up today from school. And then I come back and look and see how she did. Now, maybe she got some of them wrong. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I take note of that and say, well, I wonder how she made her mistakes. Mm-hmm. Well, there's a cup and there's a cat. Maybe she just picked the first word that she could find and put it underneath cat and wasn't really thinking. So maybe tomorrow I take another turn and I sort of figure it out. Here, now we do want them to start decoding where there's no picture prompting them in terms of what to find. So this is good practice. You know, things like little environment labels for the home, little action words that they can do, and I can take a turn, they can take a turn. What's nice about this is it's activity. And if a child, like for example, these action words, and she gets to actually run in the house if she reads that word, do you think maybe she'll want to play this game again and again? So what happens when she starts to do this, and now this is true reading, this is true decoding. And so she likes the one that says hop, up, hop, and she gets to hop. At some point, she doesn't say up anymore. She just says what?
Hop.
Ah. So with repetition comes this internal knowing what a word is. And often sometimes parents will ask me, well, my child has to sound out everything. You know, so well, he has to sound it out until he doesn't need to sound it out. So repetition, and that's why when I said reading problems and reading success primarily occur at the word level, we want to give them lots of opportunity to really decode lots of words so that their inner mechanism starts to learn how to just make a word a sight word. I mean, it becomes a sight word, not just because we're flashing it in front of them, but because they've decoded it enough. And all of a sudden their brain goes, oh, I know what that is. That's hop. So here's one of those little self-checking sheets. I want the child to be pretty good at decoding 3-letter words. It doesn't have to be terrible, great mastery, but I really feel like, okay, that kid is really, integrated. They really get it. And I'm starting to see that they don't have to sound out every word. They start to call out words like bus or pig because they've done it enough. What happens a lot of times is teachers are calling me for help, or a parent saying, my kid's in kindergarten and he's going to first grade, and they're like, they start to move this stuff pretty quickly because they're older, they're more mature. It's not rocket science, but they get the repetition that they didn't get in the classroom.
Right.
See, the thing about public schools in many cases is that the teacher is moving at the pace of the best learners. They don't need a lot of repetition.
Right.
But this other kid who might be the next genius on the block, for whatever reason, he just needed more repetition, and he's not getting it because things are moving too quickly. So that's where that intervention comes in, where you're taking them back to some drop stitches and just making sure that you're filling in that foundation so that they're really solid. Now, I like to have children work with 4-letter words because it's harder. There are 4 phonemes instead of 3. It's a little bit harder to segment the word flag, ag, because that f and that ul are sort of bonded together, but we need to pull them apart. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
By the way, children who have dyslexia or dyslexic tendencies, this is their core problem, is they can't identify those individual phonemes, especially when they're in a little bit of a longer word where there's a blend at the beginning or the blend at the end. We do not want to teach flag as fl. We definitely want to separate the f from the ul.
Oh.
So once they've done 3-letter words and you feel like they can move on to 4, they're already familiar with these activities. It's the same activities, they're just with new words. And so they can be quite independent. This is a little bit more optional. I actually need to put a little sign on that says optional. I love 5- and 6-letter words because it's like a puzzle now. It's like, oh gosh, how can I figure this out? It's not absolutely crucial. Actually, this picture down here is wrong. These should be 5- and 6-letter words there. I need to change that. Oh. But high frequency words are a big deal. And I do want to introduce children to a small set of high frequency words so that they can start working with little phrases and sentences. There aren't that many, it and is and the, but you know, we want to make sure they're familiar with them because a lot of this work is decoding, like fun and tent and twins. Twins has 5 letters, and wet is very simple. Get is pretty simple, but you know, they have to be able to know some of those connecting words. I love silent E. It's not a mystery. I love silent E. It's just fun. It's just so fun. I'll say, here, Thomas, I often do this when I go to public schools with kindergarten kids, and I'll give them a silent E word pocket. And the teacher's like going behind the scene, like going, no, they're not ready for this. I haven't introduced it. Let's see what happens. So the kid who can segment goes sl-eyed, 4 sounds. He moves the S and the L and the I and the D in position. And then that E is sort of sitting over here. Perfect teaching moment, isn't it? Well, you know, interesting. That says slid. Let me show you how to make it say slide. It's not rocket science. There's no big explanation. These are just 5-year-olds. You don't have to understand everything. Just show them how to do it.
I love that because it's been a challenge to teach about the silent E. Because you have to say, why on earth is it there? Like, what?
Well, it's there because, well, for various reasons. In this particular case, it makes the I say its name. But if you have the word like blue for an older child, well, why is that silent E there? Well, it's because English words cannot ever end in U. Think about that one, okay? Or in the word charge or dance, it's there because it has to make the C and the G soft, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. This is really important because if you have a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old at home and you're really sort of wondering, maybe you feel like there's a problem or they're not progressing, reading problems primarily occur at the word level. So you want to go back to the word level and make sure they're really decoding well. Now, if you're talking about a 3 or 4-year-old, they're not at the word level, they're at the sound level. So you're going to build up the pyramid to get to words, but you're going to really build that foundation strong. If you're working with a junior high kid even, or a 5th grader, if I'm tutoring them, which I don't do that much anymore, I'm going to bring them back to words because they have to be really, really good at decoding, not only decoding words that are decodable, but really being able to tackle high frequency words. Here's an example of how a child can teach themselves. If a child can do 3-letter word pockets, they can absolutely do this with absolutely no instruction. Oh, well, you haven't taught them the OA. So what? Let's see what happens. What are the sounds of goat? G-oat. So, I mean, how hard is it, right? Do you think that you actually think the child will be wrong? No. You go, let's see, I guess that's an O. I'll put it up there. And then the T. You see, it's a simple example. It doesn't mean they learn everything by themselves, but they have a tremendous capacity to figure out new stuff because of their segmentation, because of their ability to decode and their ability to encode. I mean, it's just not that hard. I'm sorry. I don't have to have these big, long instructions. They can figure out how to read these words. Believe me, if they can decode 3- and 4-letter words, they can start to figure this stuff out. Then I can sort of have a set way of leading them through work.
Brilliant.
So it's a whole lot more I could probably share. I know our time is probably getting short, and I appreciate you giving me the floor to just talk about reading, which I love to do. Well, what I think would be helpful is just to review some of the really key things, because often I forget to go back and sort of use that journalistic technique of you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. Is a couple of things that are hugely important is that phoneme segmentation is the most important skill a child could have. And that is the ability to take a spoken word like cat or boot or church and take it apart into its individual sounds. Alphabet knowledge is crucial. Children who are a little bit older and are struggling, go look at their alphabet knowledge. How strong are they with their sounds? And then the beginning sound isolation is what allows a child to actually teach themselves the alphabet. And we teach them how to isolate beginning sounds by modeling it for them. Here's another thing. You can drive in the car with your child and say, okay, Susie, what do you see out the window? And Susie sees a fence. And so mom or dad who's driving says, oh, fence. What else do you see? Oh, I see a dog. Oh, dog. Mm. It's the teacher or the parent who's modeling for the child, and they're modeling for the child's brain through the ear. Whenever it happens, it happens. The story I like to tell when I'm giving presentations is the parent who calls me and says, you know, I think my daughter's starting to stutter. Wow, I'm with this child 6 hours a day and I didn't notice that. Well, tell me about it. Well, yeah, she comes home and says, when is daddy coming home? When is dinner? Okay, I see what's happening. Well, I'll check tomorrow, but I don't think she's stuttering. We're doing a lot of beginning sound isolation. So that told me something I would like to have known the day before, is that the child can actually isolate beginning sounds on her own because we've been playing so many games. Brilliant. So that's fun. The next day I come into class and the child shows me that she can actually do it. She touches the table and says, I give her the ball and she says, but. And that's one of the best days because I get to start teaching the alphabet.
Wonderful. I'm wondering if new parents, you know, with younger children, even younger than 3, when you mentioned about, you know, spoon, as you say the spoon as you're feeding them a meal, if they have this knowledge, they could even be starting to emphasize that first sound way back then.
You could, and you don't want to do it a whole lot because these young children, even children who are 3 and 4, need to have good, correctly spoken words and sentences. Just good, pure language. And if you keep breaking it up all the time, you're not giving them what they really need, is just good language. One of the things I do recommend with parents of young children, actually of all children, is of course to read to them. But I think sometimes we don't realize we can read stuff to them that's a little bit harder, a little bit more above their comprehension. And we want to do that because it gives gives them richer vocabulary. It gives them more complete and more complicated sentence structure. I remember tutoring a fourth grader who was actually reading pretty well, but when he read a longer sentence that had maybe a parenthetical thing or a adjectival things that goes off from the main concept, he would get lost because when he got to the end of the sentence, he couldn't quite remember what it was because it's a little bit more of a complex sentence structure. So it's important to read more rich literature to children. And one of the things that I love about audiobooks for children, again, that's a great place to have something that's a little bit harder for them to understand, is the language is so rich and their ear is hearing this wonderful, wonderful, complete, grammatical, complicated language.
I love that. I think of that as like doing running training so you can make running for the bus easy. What do you think about poetry? Like, we've started to incorporate poetry into
Well, you know, poetry leads to so many things. It leads to concepts, thought, vocabulary. Isn't vocabulary so interesting? I mean, you study Shakespeare, for example, and you start to dive into some of these words, you go, wow, the etymology of words. I mean, homeschoolers are really known for doing a lot of that, etymology of words and the history of words. And you love words for the rest of your life. A turn of a phrase, an interesting word. I mean, it's the love of language that you impart through things like poetry and reading to them really great books.
I feel I'm speechless, and it's not often the case. Also, something I always say is to my child is that great thing about reading is it opens up the world.
You know, you teach children to read so they can they learn to read so they can read to learn. And last thing I want to say before you let me go.
Yeah.
You know, my experience in Africa was just profound, and my heart is with children who are of underprivileged backgrounds. In South Africa, the blacks are very underprivileged and very uneducated. The legacy of apartheid, it continues. It's amazing. Even though it's over, it ain't over. But even here in the United States of America, my heart is with these communities that are really struggling with children from poor, impoverished backgrounds. They don't bring to their classroom when they come to school very much language. Mm. So my sister is very involved with nonprofit things. She helped me in Africa. We're looking for communities, for schools that are interested in having a pilot program in their kindergarten or preschool environment of my program. Because maybe they're struggling, maybe their children really aren't doing well. And they're sort of, the teachers themselves, the administrators are struggling with finding something. And all they've got sometimes is these big publishing houses that want to sell them all these big materials. But I think what I have to offer can really help some of these communities, these children who are impoverished, and they learn to read. That really does open the world to them. That's
wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been really wonderful talking with you and about the importance of reading and the development of a child in the early stages. How can people watching this interview, how can they find out more about you and this amazing reading program?
Well, my website is randallklein.com or earlyreadingmastery.com. I have a lot of free information on the handout page. You can see my materials. I'm not interested in people feeling like they have to buy a lot of stuff. They can make stuff if they want, but my stuff is very inexpensive. And the thing that I really want them to do is, if they're really wanting to teach their child to read at home, is to go to my handout page and download that little ebook called The Klein Method of Early Reading Mastery. It sort of lays out the whole sequence, and it shows you the materials you can choose to use or not choose to use. And it'll sort of like a self-teaching for the parent to take the mystery out. I want to take the mystery out of reading instruction, because the child does it really on her own, but we have to provide sort of a structure, a sequence, and a particular set of materials that the child can choose from. I'm going to show you one thing that I'm not sure if you can see.
Yeah.
If you can see this, I haven't quite finished it. This is just one.
Yeah, I can see it.
This is my first cluster of letters. So all of these 4 activities are for the AGHMS, and I haven't glued these down onto the boxes yet. This is a prototype, so I can start going to communities and charter schools and wherever to say, okay, this is what you can do in your own school. This is a prototype. You just sort of organize your material, but this whole box is just for that one cluster. So the child who's introduced to that cluster, she knows she can choose anything in here. It's very organized in that sense. So I guess I'm bringing that up because that's what we want to do, is make the parents feel like it's not a mystery. You have a few choice activities, and you sort of help guide the child along. And those 2 phonemic awareness activities, skills, the beginning sound isolation and phoneme segmentation, allow the child to do everything. Anyway, I really appreciate this opportunity that you've given me, Shari, to address your group.
It's been wonderful.
My contact information is on my website. Email, call me.
I'll put it below this as well.
Yeah, okay, good.
I want to thank you so much for giving us your time and your expertise, your tremendous expertise, and your passion and joy about reading and how important it is for young children. You're really doing so much good in the world, not just through Early Reading Mastery Program, but you yourself and the stories that you've shared with us. So I very much appreciate you giving up your time. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Shari. Thank you so much.
Thanks.